What's going on, everybody? So it is a beautiful day, almost sunset, and it is a little less than 70 degrees, so not too cold, not too hot. Why is this person slowing down so much? You want me to pass him on the bike lane? Because I will. Apparently they wanted me to pass them instead of just stepping on the gas and keep moving. But alright, so I am at 967 miles on this bike. So as you guys know, it is review time, and I'm gonna drive to a location right now, hopefully the same location that I did my other reviews of the Yamaha boat, the MT-09, the MT-07, and I will try to give you guys as much information as possible on this bike. I did make a little list of the pros and cons, the things that I like and dislike, and I'll be completely honest with you guys on what I think about the bike so far. So I will see you guys in a bit. Alright guys, so we are recording. So I changed the view to standard, so it's not ultra wide, because I did a review on my Yamaha boat before and some people hated because the view was distorted because it was on wide angle. This is still a little bit wide because it's an action camera, but you guys will be able to see the bike a little bit better this way. I'm gonna move back a little bit. So that is the bike. And this is a 2025 Indian Sports Scout. Pretty good looking bike in my opinion. I love how the engine looks. So I got a couple of things to talk about, and let's first start with the things that I like about this bike. And the number one thing is how nimble this bike feels. It's the weight on this bike is very balanced, so it's very easy to move it around and go through turns, and it holds a line really well on a turn. So if you guys are like doing highway speeds, it actually feels more stable than the Yamaha MT-09 that I had when you take a turn. The bike, wherever you aim the bike, it just stays on that line. The second thing that's also kind of related to how nimble it is the weight of the bike. And it feels very light for a cruiser, but it's heavy enough that it's going to give you a great stability. But when you're standing on the bike, when you're like at a stop sign or whenever you're just moving the bike around, it feels very easy to move. It feels very light. Okay, so comparing to the Yamaha boat that I had, this bike feels lighter, and I think they're around the same weight. But this bike feels lighter because the weight is feels lower and more centered. So this bike feels lighter, it feels more nimble than the Yamaha boat that I had. So another thing that I really like about this bike is the power. So this bike has 3 power modes. It has a standard, it has a sports mode, and it has a rain mode. I have not used the rain mode. I don't see any reason to. I don't really ride on the rain, so I usually switch between standard and the sports mode. It's nice because you can switch on the go, so if you're riding, you can just go through the menu. You just press this little button here and hold it for about 3 seconds, and then you can move it to the right, change the sports mode, select it, and go back to the main screen. And that's pretty awesome because I do like the standard mode whenever I'm doing lane splitting on heavy traffic, because it is a little bit smoother at slower speeds. And when it comes to regular riding, I usually ride it on sports mode because it's kind of similar to a naked bike. The engine braking is not as strong, the gears are a little bit wider. You have like a wider gear ratio, so you can, like, first gear you usually can cruise at a little bit of a higher speed, so your first gear is more usable than a lot of naked or sports bike, right? And let's say like you're doing like 30 miles per hour, you can cruise on second gear, and even on the MT-09, which you can of course go a lot faster than 30 miles per hour. But if you're cruising at 30 miles per hour on the MT-09, I usually would have to switch to third gear to not feel the engine braking as much and get a smoother ride. So another thing that I really like about this bike is the seat height, because I am a short rider, as I mentioned before on my other videos. I am 5'4". Sorry, I am 5'7", and I wish I had brought my tripod so I could put the camera and sit on the bike for you guys to see. But as you guys can see, it's a very low seat height. I can flat foot this bike with no issues. So I'm sure for even someone that's 5 foot or less, you should be able to touch both feet on the ground, maybe even flat foot, because it's very low. Okay, so I don't think short riders will have any issues with this at all. Taller riders will also be fine. I have a friend that's a lot taller than me. He's more than 6 feet. He might be 6'2", and he can sit comfortably on this bike. His knees are a little bit more bent, but they're still a little bit forward. Okay, so if you're over 6 feet tall, you should be comfortable on this bike without any issues. And that brings me to the comfort, right? So the seat height related to comfort, uh, that's like being able to flat foot the bike at a stop sign is awesome. For me, that's one of the reasons that I bought this bike, just for that extra comfort. There are a couple of things that I wish were different, and that being that would make the comfort a little bit better. That will be some pullback bar risers, and I'll actually talk about that right now because this tank feels very long, especially coming from the MT-09. The tank is very long, and this bar riser, the 6 inch, it's retarded. Okay, I'm gonna be honest here. It's not. It doesn't make sense. So I'm gonna sit on the bike here and then show you guys. So if I sit on the bike and then I put my foot forward, and I gotta reach really far for the handlebars. Okay, so I gotta reach really far, and it's not comfortable because I'm basically sitting like a taco shell, right? So I have my foot forward like this, and then I gotta reach like this. So I'm like like a taco shell, literally, like my arms forward, and then my butt, and then my foot forward. It doesn't make sense. So I don't get why, because this was supposed to be the like the previous model of this one, I believe, was the Rogue, and they did have some mini apes. I don't get why they didn't just leave the mini apes there, or at least put some pullback risers, right? Because it doesn't make sense to have a bike like this with forward controls, and then you gotta reach so far for the handlebars. I don't see how that could be comfortable for anyone, honestly. I think anyone that buys this bike will probably want to change that. So that's, yeah. Well, actually, I was supposed to leave that for the don't like, but well, here we are. All right, let's talk about the suspension. Suspension is really comfortable. I Okay, so the suspension on this bike is very comfortable. There's only 3 inch of travel, but I remember riding the Yamaha Bolt. Any little bump, it would just hurt my back so bad. This bike, it doesn't hurt that bad. It's not like the suspension is. It's good. It's not great with forward controls, right? Because if you have forward controls and then you see a bump, you can't really put your feet on the foot pegs and lift yourself up to avoid the bumps. So you just got to take it. But the bumps are not that bad with the suspension on this bike. Okay. Uh, I would assume the other one, what's it called, the Bobber, is a little bit worse because that one has less suspension travel. This one has 3 inches, so which is one of the reasons that I bought this model instead. And also the front wheel, I like that one better. Uh, but the suspension is actually really good. I have no complaints about it. I Once I have pullback risers, it will be better. Yeah. So one of the things that are really bad on this bike, that it's basically a combo between the suspension and the handlebar reach, but it's not because the suspension is bad, it's more about the handlebar reach. So whenever I go over a bump, I can't put my foot on the pegs and then hold myself up. Uh, but since I'm reaching forward so far, whenever I go over a bump, your body kind of tends to do this, and it's either your hand wants to slip off the handlebars or you pull on the throttle. So that is just very uncomfortable and dangerous, which is one of the reasons that I'm getting some pullback risers, right? And yeah, that's one of the worst things about this bike. I really hate that. So I can't wait to be able to get some pullback risers. Unfortunately, for this bike at this moment, since it is a 2025 model, there aren't that many aftermarket parts. Sorry, I did buy the pullback risers from the Lawless garage, but the odometer adapter is in back order, so that's gonna be a couple of weeks, they said. Uh, and it seems like you can't really return with them or cancel your order, so that's annoying. Because looks like Dean Speed actually just came with the adapter for that, and well, for their risers. So I wish that came out like before I bought mine, right? Uh, but oh well. So I'll just wait for that to arrive, replace it, and then I'll give you guys a review on that. Another thing that I don't like, well, I didn't like at all, was the original foot pegs, because it's just the little standard ones that you get with every bike. And having forward controls, it felt like my feet were slipping off every single time. So let's say you're sitting on the bike here and you're on the highway, and it felt like my foot kept just going like this, right? So I kept having to hold my feet up to not have it slide down and just hit the floor on the highway. So I bought this mini floorboards. The links are gonna be on the description for whatever you guys buy. Those are affiliate links. It will help keep my links active if you guys purchase them. So please do. Okay, thank you. Leave a like and comment too. That'll help the video reach more people. So the original foot pegs, not great. Handlebar reach, not great. Suspension, pretty good. Let's see, what else are we talking about? The mirrors. Okay, that's one of the things that I changed. If you guys can't see here, I put this little mirrors. So with the original mirrors, the bar end mirrors, they add an extra inch and a half to the handlebar on each side. And every time that I was riding doing lane splitting, it felt like the handlebar was just crazy long. Uh, and it was awful to do lane splitting. Those mirrors, they actually work really well. They don't vibrate at all. These do vibrate quite a bit, so I will keep them for now, but eventually I might change them if I find something that works better. Uh, but the old ones, they don't vibrate a lot, but and you can see really well on them, but they make the handlebars really long. So alright, so if you don't do lane splitting, uh, you should be fine with the original ones. Okay, the ones that came with the bike, they work really well. They look nice. But if you're gonna lane split, these work really well. Okay. So a couple of questions that people ask too: how does this bike handle on stop and go traffic? Like if you're riding in the city, if you're riding on highway, if you're riding on back roads. So I'll try to answer all of those here. So back roads, the bike is really fun. It's not a sports bike that you're gonna just throw around everywhere, but for the way that I ride, which is usually chill, I don't go all aggressive on a sports bike. It feels great. I mean, the bike is nimble. I can turn easy. I'm not as aggressive, of course, as a sports bike, but it's it's great, honestly. Highway. So if you're riding on the highway, plenty of power. No issue with power here. So usually, just so you guys have an idea, the bike rides comfortably on fifth gear up until around 80 miles per hour. So I feel like if I switch to sixth gear before 80 miles per hour, I feel like I'm on the wrong gear because the gears are pretty long and you feel comfortable in fifth gear. So you have a lot of power still on fifth gear up to 80 miles per hour and even more. And whenever you switch to sixth gear too, you still have more to go. So plenty of power for the highway, plenty of passing power. Uh, you really don't need anything bigger than this to have enough passing power. Okay, so kind of similar to the MT-09, you don't really need more power than that bike. I mean, some people like to have it, but you don't need it. Uh, it's it's really fast. Um, let's talk about city riding. So city riding the bike is it's awesome. I mean, it's not as easy to lane split inside, like in town traffic. You can still do it, but it's not as easy as it was on the MT-09 because, of course, the MT-09 is a taller bike, so it's easy to like throw around and almost like a bicycle. Of course, it's a lot heavier. Uh, but this bike, I find myself riding it a little bit more chill inside the city. I still do lane split whenever I'm riding in town. And if there's enough space, of course, I'll just lane split because it's legal in California, just so you guys know. So I will do that. And I love the bike for every scenario, really. There are a couple of changes that I'll be making to this bike. So one of them is going to be I will buy a two up seat. I'm good, thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah. Oh man, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. All right, I hope so. I hope so. Have a good day. Such a nice man. All right, so let's get back to it. Where was I? I believe I was talking about the changes that I was gonna make to the bike, right? So the seat, I'll put a two up seat. I'm waiting for maybe Saddleman to make a two up seat for this bike. Looks like they only have up to the 2024 model. So sissy bar, and I'll put some saddlebags too. So those they'll wait for a little bit, but the first thing that I'm concerned about is the handlebar risers, and that's mainly it. I bought some heated grips too because I tried finding. Well, I didn't install them yet. I'll just install everything whenever I do the risers. I tried. I tried the Dean Speeds. What's it called? The handlebar, like the hand guards, and they don't fit on this bike because the old model, this part here was a little bit taller. It was about here. So for whatever reason on this model they changed it. So now the the Dean Speed risers don't fit here. And on their website it says all scouts, but it's not it doesn't fit the 2025 model. Okay. All right, so one thing uh, that that I don't like about this bike, another thing that I don't like, is the price. I don't know why cruisers need to be so expensive. I mean, this bike is a lot more expensive than, let's say, like a Yamaha MT-09, and you basically get the same power that you would get for that bike. Of course, it does feel a lot more premium, but I feel like it's too much money for a motorcycle. Uh, so that being said, would I buy this bike again? I am not sure, honestly. I do like all the comfort that it gives me, and all the comfort that it could give me after I change whatever I need to change to make it fit me, right? But on top of buying a bike that's already a lot of money, you still have to spend a lot of money because all of the parts are expensive too. So for the bar risers, the whole kit and everything, cables and all, that's $1,000, right? So is it worth it? It depends. That's like, if you guys like this type of bike, this bike does it all, honestly. It's probably not gonna be the best bike for you to go across the country, but it's very comfortable. Okay? Uh, but let's say like you could buy the new Triumph Tiger Sport 800, which is has over 100 horsepower to you. It's an adventure bike, and it basically has everything. You don't really need to do any modifications to that bike, right? And for cheaper than this bike. And on this bike, on top of buying the bike, you would have to make a lot of changes to make it fit you. But it depends on what kind of bike you like, right? I just like motorcycles. So if in the future I decide to change to a different motorcycle or sell this bike, I don't see myself doing that anytime soon. I would think about if I want to buy another cruiser, and give up some of this comfort to buy a bike that's a little bit taller and then just deal with not being able to reach the ground whenever I get to a stop. Okay, because it's a lot of money. One other thing that I don't like about this bike, I'm gonna mention here, the fuel gauge and the tank. So the tank it's a very long tank, which seems to be very big, but it's only 3.5 gallons. And the fuel gauge doesn't read properly, right? So might as well not have it. Just have a little symbol there saying that you're on E, because sometimes you ride the bike and you think you're good to go, but then you get home, you put the bike away, you turn the bike on the next day, and the little E sign pops up showing that you're on your reserve gas, and you you had no idea, right? So with this tank, you can expect to stop for gas for basically over 100 miles, which is one of the reasons that I would not take this bike cross country. You could, I mean, maybe I would, just because I usually don't like to ride for over an hour without stopping anyway. So I'd probably ride for an hour, stop, get gas, stretch my legs a bit, ride again for another hour. Uh, but yeah, it's not. I mean, you basically every 100 miles you gotta stop for gas. Okay. So that is it, guys. I know it kind of seems like a lot of don't likes, but honestly, most of the things on this bike that I said I don't like, I had to really pick, and like, just to give you guys something. Uh, but if I were gonna say like, okay, what I really don't like about this bike, it would be the handlebar reach. Other than that, everything is awesome. Handlebar reach is retarded. I don't know who designed this and decided, oh yeah, let's do a 6-inch handlebar riser, no pullback at all, with this long ass tank. It's gonna be perfect. I don't know who did that. They should be fired. Oh, one other thing that I forgot to mention is the original exhaust on this bike, it's very quiet. So if you like to have any noise at all on this bike, you gotta throw on a slip-on. I have the tab slip-on, and it sounds very good in my opinion. So if you guys want anything like this, you gotta add a slip-on. So let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.